Am I the only one out there that is getting sick and tired of watching crash video after crash video after crash video? I'm talking about a real estate crash. I am seeing it across YouTube. Folks out there saying the market is overvalued. We're in a bubble. Things are going to, the bubble's going to pop and things are going to be disastrous. Admittedly, I myself was made a video probably about 6 months ago speaking something similar, but I have completely changed my tune. There's many reasons for that, and we're going to get into them a little bit later on here. But the long and short of it is, number one, this current administration, there's no way they're going to let the housing market tank on their watch. And then secondly, there is money everywhere right now. I mean, everywhere, pouring into real estate. It is one of the safest bets to hedge against inflation. And you are seeing that right now with money coming from who knows where. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. If you are new to the channel, my name is Brian. I'm a full-time realtor here in the Boston market. On this channel, we talk all things real estate, and sometimes we get into the nitty-gritty details, which is kind of what we're going to do today. But we're going to keep it within the context of my market, which is the Boston market. So if you're living in California or Idaho or Chicago, down in Florida, this may still be relevant to you, but again, I'm looking at it specifically in my market and the things that we're seeing here in Boston. So with that, let's get into it. So what I have pulled up here is I have access as a realtor. I have access to the market data for specifically Boston. And the way I have this configured right now is I have 3 different trend lines. You'll see it for single families, condominiums, and 2-family homes. The reason why I brought 2-family homes into this mix is just to show you kind of what that looks like in my market, because we do have a number of 2 families in the Boston market, but it is still a tiny percentage of the homes sold, yet that gets talked about a lot in the news and in videos as well. All right, so let's just right off the bat talk about what a lot of people are saying and how we can debunk this, okay? First and foremost, we have to look at inventory levels. So this graph goes from January 2018 all the way out to August of 2021, okay? And you can see here already, you see like seasonal patterns, right? Where it goes up during the summertime and then it starts to fall during the winter months, which around here are quite cold. And then what's interesting here is in 2021 is this kind of flatlining. It's going up a little bit, but it really hasn't crested the way that we would have seen it in the past. So you just don't have the same number of homes for sale that you would typically have in a balanced market. But you are seeing some type of seasonality. On average, it's down about 30, maybe 35% here in the market. Oh, the other thing I should mention here is I have all towns selected. So there's 5 regions. I have basically the greater Boston market. So it can go as far out as like, Wilmington, and I think, down south or like Quincy, goes as far north as Peabody. So it's a fairly large swath of inventory, of area that we're talking about here. Okay, so inventory is down about 30-35%. So this is just like simple economics, right? So if you have 30% less of something, then people will be willing to pay the demand, assuming that the demand hasn't changed, which in this case it actually has. It's gone up, but even if it remains the same, just having 30-35% fewer or 30-35% less supply, that is going to be a higher transaction price. So it's really simple economics that's happening here. But let's take a look at solds. So this is interesting because, again, you can see this seasonality in 2021 is really no different, right? So it is, you're seeing the same number of homes that were sold in August of 2021 that you saw in August of 2020. So that's remained fairly consistent. And then when you look at the new new listings, you'll also see the seasonality, right? Where it peaks during the summertime and then it starts to drop off toward the wintertime, and folks don't typically buy a home here in the wintertime or don't list their home for sale here in winter because there's just far fewer buyers for those homes, and prices tend to suffer because of it. So anyways, this is cyclical, and you can see here again, we're right up where we should be this time of year. So now what you look at when you look at prices is this is the median sold price by month. And here in Boston, that's not really a great indication because there are so many condos in the market, and it's more accurate to look at a cost per square foot, which we'll look at next. But anyways, the gist here is the median home sale price. So you can see back in, August of 2018, it was $690. This is for a 2-family, by the way. And then in August of 2021, they're at $827.5. For single family homes, it's now $780, up from $625. So really healthy gains, and the same thing here in the condo market, $575 up to $639. So this is even though it feels like there's home prices, and don't get me wrong, in some markets home prices are absolutely soaring. Phoenix, Boise, Idaho, Las Vegas, basically anywhere in the Sun Belt, anywhere down south, like those home prices are soaring. But where I am here in the Northeast, we've had, I don't want to call it steady appreciation, but good, healthy appreciation in home sales over the past 3 years, which, again, is a reason why, we haven't had this huge spike. So it's not a real speculative market. So where you don't have those huge spikes, you're not going to have those huge drop offs. So even in the event that the market does start to flatten out and maybe correct a little bit here in the Boston market, it's going to come down just a little bit. And that's what we saw back in 2008, 2009, right? Where the home prices here in this market fell between 10 and 20%, the average being about 15%. So we didn't see this big drop offs that places like Las Vegas, Phoenix, where they, I think like Las Vegas was at close to 40%. So we're not going to see that here in Boston, and many other markets as well. All right, let's look at a cost per square foot. And this is, I think, the most telling, right? So it has been just kind of steady growth. You're not seeing any huge spike. 628, again, this is for condos. And with condos, the reason you have a cost per square foot so high is because many of the condos are in Boston, which obviously the real estate in Boston proper is going to be more expensive than it is outside the city. But anyway, 628 on average versus 567. So it's gone up, considerably, maybe about 20% or so, which again is healthy. And you're seeing the same thing with single family homes and multifamily homes as well. Now, this is probably the most interesting graph here. This is the days on market. And you're hearing like people talk constantly about like, hey, homes are selling in, 3 days, 4 days. And that is absolutely the case. But there are also instances where a house might stay on the market for a little bit longer. In fact, you can see here on the graph where in August, it ticked up quite a bit. It's up to 25 days for a single family, 33 for a multifamily, and 36 days for a condominium. And much of this is I attribute it to anyways, the fact that so many people were on vacation during the summertime that there were just far fewer buyers in the marketplace because no one was around. Everyone was traveling. They recognized that this is like the only opportunity to go out and take a vacation, and people took advantage of it. So the market was very quiet. There, the open houses, there were far fewer people. People were just gone. They were traveling. No one was around. So as a result, you saw that the days on market shot up quite a bit compared to where we were just a couple of months prior to that. Now, what's been happening here recently is that now that everybody is back from vacation, we are right back into that same pattern that we saw back in April, May, and June with multiple offers, waiving contingencies. There's no mortgage contingency. There's no inspection. Everything is going over asking. And again, it's multiple offers. I was just with a client last Thursday, we looked at a multifamily in a town called Brookline. It's a very expensive community. This particular two-family was a $1.6 million two-family in decent shape. It did need some work. The exterior needed to be painted. The interior needed some updating. It still had all relatively old electrical. The plumbing was probably still original. Didn't have any HVAC, no new HVAC. So it just had a boiler down in the basement, pumping up to radiators. So it needed a bunch of work. So let's say it needed $250,000 to really get it to that level that you'd want to like live in for an extended period of time. Multiple offers. I can't share all the details, but it was one of those situations where there was more than a half dozen offers, all legitimate, all over asking, most waiving all contingencies. So there is a tremendous amount of cash in the market right now, not just in Boston, but across the board. So where's the money coming from? I don't think anybody knows. And if they tell you that they do, then they're probably just making something up. I have my hunch as to what's going on, but it's just a hunch. I don't have any data to support it. So I'm not even gonna share it necessarily. But anyways, there's a lot of money in the market right now. Okay, so this kind of gives a snapshot of Boston. But here's the reason why I think it's not going to crash as I had originally anticipated. Okay, before we jump into this next segment, if you are enjoying this video, if you could just take a quick second to like the video and also smash that subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. All right, let's continue. The banks have been surprisingly good at getting people out of forbearance. And as a result, so the things that we saw back in, say, 6 months ago, right, where we saw a tremendous number of distressed properties, we're just now starting to see some of those distressed properties get cleaned up. So the market actually looks a lot better the distressed properties looks a lot better in some markets now than it did 6 months ago. So let's take a quick look at this. So this is Realtor's Property Resource, RPR for short. And again, as a realtor, I have access to this system. But you can see here in the darker shades of red, that's where the highest number of distressed properties are. So you can see, again, I'm here in Boston, and there's very little distressed property up here in Boston. There's a little bit south of the city, a little bit north of the city, but all things considered, we are in great shape here in Boston. So you're just not going to see the type of correction that you would see in perhaps some other markets. In fact, in Providence, there's actually more distressed properties than there are in Boston. Now, New York, it still looks like there's quite a bit of distressed properties, but this looks much better than it did 6 months ago. So 6 months ago, you saw this was the whole thing was like deep red, and it extended all the way down the I-95 corridor, all the way down to Baltimore and Washington, D.C. So Philly, I still think Philly, you're going to have some issues there, but again, it's not nearly as bad as it was 6 months ago. Same thing in Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago. Unfortunately, Chicago doesn't look like it's improved all that much. This looks pretty similar to what it looked like a little while ago. Where we also have seen some improvement is down in Florida. Again, this has been red all the way from Homestead up to West Palm Beach, all these distressed properties. And out here in Los Angeles, again, you're still seeing, a decent amount of distressed properties, but it's not nearly as bad as it was just a few months ago. San Francisco, there's virtually nothing happening in Sacramento. And then up in the Pacific Northwest, I don't think there's anything going on. Yeah, a little bit in Portland, nothing. Seattle, nothing. So here's what's happening with these distressed properties is that people are at the point when they're coming out of forbearance, they're either refinancing and their loan is being restructured. I've heard things where your term is extended out from 30 years to 40 years. In addition to that, they're taking 25% of the principal balance and setting that essentially off to the side. It doesn't disappear, but they're basically setting it off to the side and then refinancing based on 75% of the principal balance. Now, when that person goes to sell, say 5, 10, 15 years later, they will still have that 25% principal that will be a lien against the property. They're going to need to satisfy that lien before they can actually release the title on the property. So that's something to be aware of. So it's not great for people. I know what happens is you just forget about it, and lo and behold, when they go to sell, say 10 years down the road, they're going to be like, hey, what is this, $35,000 lien on my property that I knew nothing about? So it's got to come out of the sale proceeds, which hopefully by that point the home will have continued to go up in value and you shouldn't have any problem covering it. The other thing that's happening with these homes that are coming out of forbearance is there are some people who just may have lost their job, again, through no fault of their own, and they just don't have the ability to make their monthly mortgage payment. So for those folks, a lot of times what they'll do is to just sell their house. So the vast majority of people that are selling their homes right now that have been in those situations are seeing this windfall of cash coming in because the market is so hot. So it's really not a bad situation at all. So you're not seeing the, collapse in the marketplace. So back to the original topic here, which is the real estate market crash. Based on the evidence that I've just showed you, do you think it's still going to crash? Am I missing something? I can imagine there might be some type of black swan event with the stock market crashes or credit freezes or, something else happens. I don't know, things that I can't even necessarily predict or anticipate. But if something happens that the housing market might soften up or crash as a byproduct of that, but I don't see this time around the real estate market causing the crash and seeing absolute mayhem, which is what we saw back in 2008, 2009. So I'd love to hear your comments down below. Again, if you did enjoy this video, make sure that you smash that like button and subscribe for additional videos. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.